Ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters, seekers of truth and justice, today I stand before you to speak about something that has shaped nations, inspired revolutions, and lifted humanity from oppression, the voice of freedom. This voice is not just a sound, it is a force, an unbreakable spirit that cannot be silenced, no matter how strong the chains that try to bind it. Freedom is not merely the absence of captivity. It is the presence of dignity, equality, and the right to be heard. It is the power to think, to speak, to dream, and to act without fear. But throughout history, we have seen that this voice of freedom has often been met with resistance, suppressed by those who fear its power. Yet, despite the barriers, freedom finds a way. It echoes in the songs of the oppressed, in the speeches of great leaders, in the protests of the unheard, and in the silent courage of those who refuse to bow down to tyranny. It is the whisper of hope to the imprisoned, the roar of justice in the face of injustice, and the unyielding belief that all people, regardless of race, gender, or status, deserve to live with dignity and respect. But freedom is not just a right, it is a responsibility. It is not given, it is taken, protected, and passed down from one generation to the next. It demands sacrifice, unity, and courage. It requires us to stand up against oppression, to speak when silence is easy, and to act when others hesitate. Today I ask you, will you be a voice for freedom? Will you stand against injustice, against discrimination, against the chains that still exist in our societies? The voice of freedom needs champions, people who will not just enjoy its blessings but will fight to extend its reach to every corner of the world. Freedom is not a privilege for the few, it is a right for all. And as long as a single voice cries out for justice, the voice of freedom will never be silenced. Let us be that voice. Let us rise, speak, and act until the day freedom truly belongs to all. Thank you. Throughout history, countless attempts have been made to silence the voice of freedom. Oppressive rulers, unjust systems, and fear-driven policies have sought to suppress those who dare to speak up. But time and time again, freedom has proven to be an indomitable force, one that cannot be permanently restrained. We have seen empires rise and fall, dictators come and go, and oppressive regimes crumble under the weight of their own injustices. Why? Because the human spirit yearns for freedom. It is embedded in our very nature to seek autonomy, to strive for self-expression, and to break free from any chains that seek to hold us down. The desire for freedom is not just a passing dream, it is a driving force that fuels revolutions, ignites movements, and reshapes societies. No wall is too high, no law too strict, and no threat too great to silence a people determined to be free. Even when voices are forcibly muted, they find a way to be heard through songs, through writings, through art, and through the collective power of a united people. Consider the great struggles of the past, the abolition of slavery, the fall of apartheid, the civil rights movements across the world. Each of these battles was fought against immense resistance, but in the end, freedom prevailed. The voice of freedom may sometimes be forced into whispers, but whispers turn into roars, and roars shake the very foundations of oppression. There is no greater force than an awakened people demanding their rights. When people stand together for justice, no army, no government, no dictator can hold them back forever. The voice of freedom is not just spoken, it is felt, it is lived, and it spreads like wildfire. It is unstoppable. When we think of freedom, many immediately picture the breaking of chains, the opening of prison doors, or the downfall of oppressive rulers. While these are powerful symbols, true freedom is much more than just the absence of physical captivity. It is not enough to be free from shackles if our voices are still silenced, our rights denied, and our dignity disregarded. Real freedom is about the ability to live with autonomy and purpose. It is the right to speak without fear, to dream without limitation, and to walk without the weight of oppression on our shoulders. It is the ability to pursue knowledge, to choose our own paths, to express our beliefs, and to define our own identities without persecution. Think of a bird that has been caged for years. When the door is opened, the bird may hesitate, unsure if it is truly free. It may have been conditioned to live within the confines of that small space, even though the sky is now open before it. This is the reality for many who have been freed from physical bondage but remain trapped by fear, by discrimination, or by the invisible barriers imposed by society. Freedom must be more than symbolic. A country may declare independence, but if its people still suffer under unjust laws, economic inequality, or systemic discrimination, can we truly call them free? A person may no longer be enslaved, but if they are denied education, healthcare, or equal opportunities, is their freedom complete? True freedom means having the ability to rise beyond survival and embrace a life of dignity, self-determination, and fulfillment. Moreover, freedom is deeply tied to justice. Where there is oppression, whether based on race, gender, class, or beliefs, true freedom is absent. No society can claim to be free if some of its people are treated as second-class citizens, if their rights are ignored, or if their voices are disregarded. A nation, a community, or even a home can only be truly free when every individual within it has the same rights, respect, and opportunities to thrive. True freedom also exists within the mind. Many people live in open societies yet remain imprisoned by self-doubt, fear of judgment, or past traumas. The journey to freedom is not just about breaking external chains, but also freeing ourselves from the limitations placed upon us by others or by our own doubts. Freedom, then, is not just about being released, it is about being empowered. It is about creating a world where every individual, regardless of background, can step forward with confidence, knowing they are valued, their voices matter, and their potential is limitless. Throughout human history, the pursuit of freedom has never been easy. It has always been met with resistance by those who benefit from control, by systems built on inequality, and by the fear of change. Freedom threatens the status quo, and those in power often go to great lengths to suppress it. Yet, despite every attempt to silence it, freedom continues to rise, pushed forward by the courage of those who refuse to accept oppression. When people demand their rights, they are often met with hostility. Governments have passed oppressive laws, rulers have imprisoned dissenters, and societies have condemned those who challenge the norm. The great revolutions of history, the struggle for democracy, the abolition of slavery, the fight for women's rights, and the battle against colonialism were not victories easily won. They were fought with blood, sacrifice, and unwavering determination. Consider the American Civil Rights Movement. When Black Americans demanded equality, they were met with brutal violence, unjust laws, and systemic oppression. Peaceful protesters were beaten, arrested, and even killed, but their voices could not be silenced. Leaders like Martin Luther King Jr., Rosa Parks, and Malcolm X stood firm in the face of this resistance, proving that the fight for freedom does not end when opposition arises, it only grows stronger. Look at the suffragettes, who fought for a woman's right to vote. They were ridiculed, arrested, and dismissed as radicals. Yet because they persisted, millions of women today have the right to participate in democracy. The resistance against them was fierce, but their determination was fiercer. Even in modern times, we see that those who fight for justice are often labeled as troublemakers or threats. Dictators silence journalists, corporations fight against labor rights, and marginalized communities face backlash when they demand equality. This pattern repeats itself in every struggle for freedom. The oppressors always claim that change will bring chaos, that the oppressed should be patient, and that things are not as bad as they seem. But history has shown that patience alone does not bring freedom, action does. The resistance to freedom is not always violent or obvious. Sometimes it is disguised as laws that restrict rights under the banner of order. Sometimes it appears as misinformation, making people believe that oppression is necessary for stability. And sometimes it is social pressure where those who speak up are isolated or ridiculed for demanding change. Yet, if history has proven anything, it is that no matter how great the resistance, freedom eventually prevails. The forces that seek to suppress it may succeed for a time, but they can never erase the human desire for justice. Every generation that fights for freedom stands on the shoulders of those who fought before them. And though the path is difficult, it is always worth walking. Freedom is not just spoken in grand speeches or written in laws, it takes many forms, appearing in the voices of the oppressed, the actions of the courageous, and even the silence of those who refuse to conform. The voice of freedom does not always shout. Sometimes it whispers in the hearts of those who dare to dream of a better world. It can be found in art, music, literature, protests, resistance, and even in the quiet defiance of those who refuse to be broken by oppression. Some express their fight for freedom through words. Great leaders like Nelson Mandela, Mahatma Gandhi, and Martin Luther King Jr. used their voices to inspire millions, speaking out against injustice even when it put their lives at risk. Their speeches and writings became powerful tools, shaping history and encouraging others to rise. The power of their words was so strong that oppressive regimes feared them more than weapons. But the voice of freedom is not always spoken aloud, it is often seen in action. The people who march in protest, who refuse to obey unjust laws, and who stand in solidarity with the oppressed are all voices of freedom. The student who challenges unfair rules, the worker who demands fair wages, the journalist who risks everything to reveal the truth, these are all ways in which freedom speaks. Art and music have also long been powerful voices of freedom. Protest songs have inspired movements, literature has exposed oppression, and paintings have depicted the struggles of the voiceless. Bob Marley's songs carried messages of resistance. Writers like George Orwell used their words to warn against the dangers of totalitarianism. Artists throughout history have used their creativity to challenge authority and ignite change. Even silence can be a voice of freedom. When someone refuses to give in to oppression, when they stand with dignity even in the face of suffering, their very existence becomes an act of resistance. A prisoner who refuses to break, a citizen who refuses to comply with unjust laws, a survivor who continues to stand tall, all of these are silent yet powerful voices of freedom. Freedom's voice is also collective. It is not just the voice of one person but the chorus of many. It is heard in the chants of protesters, in the signing of petitions, in the gathering of communities who demand change. When people unite for a cause, their collective voice becomes impossible to ignore. No matter how it is expressed through speech, action, art, or even defiant silence, the voice of freedom cannot be erased. It adapts, it grows, and it finds new ways to make itself heard. Every person who dares to resist oppression in their own way adds to this powerful voice, ensuring that the message of justice and equality continues to echo across generations. Many people view freedom as something that is simply given, a birthright that requires no effort to maintain. But history has shown us that freedom is not just a privilege to be enjoyed, it is a responsibility that must be actively protected, nurtured, and passed on to future generations. If we take freedom for granted, it can be eroded. and if we fail to stand up for it, it can be taken away. Freedom is not something that exists in isolation. It thrives when people work together to uphold justice, fairness, and equality. Every person who enjoys freedom today does so because of the sacrifices of those who came before them, those who marched, who fought, and who refused to accept oppression. But their struggles were not the end of the journey, they were only the foundation. It is now up to each of us to ensure that the freedom we enjoy is not just maintained but expanded to include those who are still denied it. Responsibility means speaking out when freedom is threatened. Too often, people remain silent when they see injustice, believing that someone else will fight the battle. But silence in the face of oppression is complicity. The responsibility of freedom means that when we see others being denied their rights, we must act, whether it is by voting, protesting, educating, or simply refusing to accept injustice as normal. Freedom also requires vigilance. There are always forces, whether in government, corporations, or society, that seek to limit freedom for their own gain. They may do so through laws that restrict speech, policies that discriminate, or economic systems that trap people in cycles of poverty. If we are not paying attention, these restrictions can slowly strip away our freedoms without us even realizing it. To be responsible for freedom means to remain aware, to question authority, and to challenge any attempts to limit our rights. Another critical aspect of responsibility is recognizing that freedom is not just for one group of people, it must be for everyone. True freedom cannot exist in a society where some people are oppressed while others live in privilege. It is not enough to be free ourselves, we must work to ensure that others are free as well. This means standing up for marginalized communities, supporting those who are struggling, and understanding that justice for one group strengthens justice for all. Responsibility also means understanding the balance between individual freedom and collective good. While we all have the right to live as we choose, our freedom should not come at the cost of harming others. True freedom is not about selfishness or personal gain, it is about creating a world where everyone has an equal chance to live with dignity. Ultimately, freedom is not a passive gift, it is an active duty. It is a fire that must be kept alive through effort, courage, and unity. It requires each of us to be engaged, to be aware, and to be willing to make sacrifices when necessary. If we fail to take responsibility for our freedom, we risk losing it not just for ourselves, but for generations to come. Freedom is never achieved through wishes or passive hope, it demands action. Throughout history, every meaningful change, every step toward justice, and every victory against oppression has been won not by those who simply desired freedom, but by those who took deliberate action to achieve it. Taking action means refusing to be a spectator in the face of injustice. Too often, people witness oppression, discrimination, or the violation of rights and think someone else will fight this battle. But freedom is never secured by waiting for others to act. It is built by those who take risks, who stand up, who use their voices, and who refuse to accept the world as it is when they know it can be better. Action does not always mean leading a revolution or taking to the streets, though those have their place. Action can be found in everyday choices. It is in the way we vote, the way we educate ourselves and others, and the way we challenge unfair practices in our workplaces, schools, and communities. It is in signing petitions, in supporting movements, in holding leaders accountable, and in refusing to stay silent when we see injustice. There are those who believe that small actions do not matter, that a single person cannot make a difference. But history proves otherwise. Every great movement began with individuals who decided to act. The civil rights movement did not begin with massive protests, it started with individuals like Rosa Parks, who refused to give up her seat, and countless others who made the choice to resist injustice. The fight for women's rights gained momentum because individuals took action, demanding the right to vote, to work, and to be treated as equals. Taking action also means educating ourselves and others. Many forms of oppression continue because people do not fully understand the systems that enable them. Learning about history, questioning authority, and spreading awareness are all powerful forms of action. A well informed society is harder to manipulate, and an educated generation is better equipped to fight for justice. But action is not always easy. It requires courage, persistence, and the willingness to face opposition. Those who fight for freedom often face criticism, threats, and sometimes even violence. But inaction carries an even greater cost, the loss of freedom itself. If we do not take action to protect our rights and the rights of others, we risk allowing injustice to grow stronger, making it even harder to fight later. Action is not just about reacting when freedoms are threatened, it is about continuously working to expand and protect those freedoms. It means not just stopping oppression, but building a society where justice, equality, and dignity are the norm. It means pushing beyond comfort, recognizing privilege, and using whatever power we have to uplift others. True freedom is not something handed down by governments or leaders, it is something people must take for themselves. And taking it requires action, not just once but continuously, for as long as oppression exists in any form. Freedom is often spoken about as a universal right, something that belongs to all people regardless of race, gender, nationality, or social status. However, history and reality show us that freedom is too often enjoyed only by the privileged, while others remain trapped in oppression, poverty, or systemic discrimination. True freedom cannot exist in a world where some are free while others are not. It must extend to all, or else it is not freedom at all, it is privilege. When freedom is limited to a select group, it creates a society built on inequality, injustice, and division. The powerful dictate the lives of the weak, and those born into disadvantaged circumstances are denied opportunities to change their fate. This is not true freedom, it is oppression disguised as order. Throughout history, we have seen entire populations denied their rights, while a small elite enjoys the full benefits of liberty. Monarchies, colonial empires, apartheid regimes, and authoritarian governments have all operated under the illusion that some people deserve freedom more than others. But the truth is, freedom is not something that should be earned based on birthright, wealth, or status. It is not a luxury reserved for the privileged, it is the foundation of human dignity and should be accessible to all. A society cannot call itself free when only certain groups have the right to speak, to vote, to work without discrimination, or to live without fear. The measure of a nation's true freedom is not how well the privileged live, but how well the most vulnerable are treated. Extending freedom to all means dismantling the barriers that prevent it. Systemic oppression, economic inequality, racial injustice, and gender discrimination all serve to keep large groups of people from experiencing true freedom. We cannot claim to live in a free world when millions are denied access to education, healthcare, fair wages, and basic human rights. We cannot say we believe in freedom when refugees are turned away, when workers are exploited, and when people are imprisoned simply for expressing their beliefs. True freedom requires justice, and justice requires action. If we truly believe that freedom belongs to everyone, then we must actively fight against the forces that try to restrict it. That means challenging racism, sexism, and all forms of discrimination. It means advocating for laws that protect the rights of all, not just the privileged few. It means recognizing our own privileges and using them to lift others rather than hoard freedom for ourselves. Some may argue that the world will never be completely equal, that suffering and oppression will always exist. But that is not a reason to accept injustice, it is a reason to fight harder. Every movement toward equality, every victory against oppression, and every act of resistance brings us closer to a world where freedom truly belongs to all. No one is truly free until everyone is free. A society where some suffer while others thrive is not a just society. A world where some live in fear while others live in comfort is not a free world. Freedom is not just about personal gain, it is about collective liberation. Only when freedom extends to every person, regardless of their background, can we truly say that we have achieved what humanity has always longed for. Freedom is not just a word, not just an idea, it is the heartbeat of humanity, the force that has driven generations to rise, to fight, and to build a better world. It is an unstoppable voice that refuses to be silenced, a fire that continues to burn even in the darkest of times. But freedom is not guaranteed. It is not something that once won remains forever. It must be protected, nurtured, and passed down generation after generation. Every one of us has a role to play in ensuring that the voice of freedom is never drowned out by the forces of oppression, indifference, or complacency. Let us remember that freedom is not just for the privileged, it belongs to all. Let us take action, not just for ourselves, but for those whose voices have been muted by injustice. Let us carry the torch of those who came before us and ensure that the future is brighter, fairer, and truly free for all. The voice of freedom must never fade. It must continue to rise louder and stronger until every chain is broken, every injustice dismantled, and every person, regardless of who they are, can stand tall and say, "I am free."